Hello everyone, welcome to another video for the Flesh and Blood card game. In this video, we'll be continuing our reviews for the Outsiders set, and more specifically, going to be reviewing the new Ranger and Ninja Mono class cards. Let's get started. Even though Ninja is technically first when you look at the card numbers, Ninja doesn't have a new hero and also has a lot less new stuff than what Ranger has. So I'll be starting with Ranger. Ranger, in addition to having a reprint of Azalea Ace in the Hole, has a brand new hero. Riptide, Lurker of the Deep. Riptide is a standard intellect 38 health hero with the effect when you play a card from your hand, you may put a card from your hand face down into your arsenal. Whenever a trap you control triggers, deal 1 damage to the attacking hero. The young version of Riptide will only have 19 health since the adult version has 38 instead of 40. I think Riptide is a pretty interesting hero. Even though I don't think he's as strong as Azuri, he definitely has access to some pretty interesting cards, mainly his 3 specializations. And I know technically he has 4, but his Quiver really isn't that good, and you'll generally be seeing Quiver of the Abyssal Depths instead, since Riptide is going to be a slower based ranger. Instead of Lexi, who's full aggro, and Azalea, who can be a bit of a flex, but is primarily right now being a large arrow character with her strong dominate, Riptide really doesn't have that. He doesn't have too much utility like Lexi does, and doesn't have dominate like Azalea does. What he does have is he can deal bonus damage to our opponent when we get our bonus effect on our traps, and he can theoretically load more arrows with this effect, but that's really not what it's going to be used for too much, since it is not really too strong of an ability. Sadly, Riptide isn't amazing, but I still think he'll have his place, since he gets really good use out of free go again attacks, something like a Ravenous Rabble. I could see a aggressive Riptide deck seeing play, using his ability to load most of your arrows instead of your bow, and then saving your bow for important situations, or if you don't have an attack to load something else. Although, I think Riptide needs a little more to be amazing. I still think he has his place, and I can't wait to see what people do with Riptide. Moving on from Riptide, let's take a look at the brand new weapon and equipment. The brand new weapon is the Barbed Castaway. Barbed Castaway has a 1 resource once per turn instant to put an arrow from your hand face up into your arsenal. It has another once per turn instant effect to be able to turn a face down arrow in your arsenal face up and put an aim counter on it. Sadly, this bow isn't the best. The instant effect is nice, allowing you to put an arrow into play if your opponent goes first, but I think it's better to have one of the Majestic bows or just using Death Dealer. There are situations where I could see Barbed Castaway, like playing something from hand to put a arrow that wants an aim counter in arsenal, and then activating the bow's second effect to flip it up and put an aim counter on it, which is definitely the intended use, but there are definitely stronger effects that you can do with your bow. Although for a baseline bow, it's really not terrible. Ranger gets 2 brand new legendaries, this time not a helmet. Instead, they get a chess piece called Trench of Sunken Treasure. Trench says once per turn instant, put a face down card from your arsenal on the bottom of your deck, gain 1 resource. Arcane Barrier 1 and Blade Break. Trench of Sunken Treasure has 1 block. I think Trench is a little niche. It's pretty good in Riptide, but I wouldn't see this in any other ranger. Azalea doesn't want to put her arsenal on the bottom to gain a resource, and this doesn't really do much in Lexi since the cards in your arsenal are probably going to be face up in that deck most of the time. So this is really here just for Riptide, and honestly, I think it could be okay. Sometimes you get a card stuck in your arsenal, or back to the situation with the weapon where your opponent went first and you got to put something underneath. It's an extra mana, but I think that's a little too cute, and Trench of Sunken Dreams is really just going to be here for a good backup choice when you need an Arcane Barrier. The other legendary is the Quiver of Abyssal Depths. This is a brand new equipment type called a Quiver. Quivers are kind of like the one-handed shields that Guardian gets. However, they can be equipped with a two-handed bow and don't have a character-handed restriction. So as long as you have a bow equipped, you can have 1 quiver equipped. The Quiver of Abyssal Depths has an instant for 3 resources and destroy it to shuffle up to 3 arrows with different names from your graveyard into your deck. This is like an extra remembrance effect and helps you go a little longer in those fatigue matchups. I think it's okay, but it's not the perfect quiver since it can't hit your pumps, it only hits arrows, and it's 3 different arrows, so you can't put in your most important ones every time. It has to be really only one of them. Although I do think that this card has its uses and will definitely be seeing play. Next is a Majestic Quiver, Quiver of Rustling Leaves. This quiver has the instant 3 resource, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's an arrow, put it face up into your arsenal and destroy Quiver of Rustling Leaves. I personally really like this card, and I think it will be a great addition into any deck trying to use 3 of a kind. Plain and simple, if you play a 3 of a kind and get a pretty bad hand, you can do a pseudo Kano activation to try and get arrows from the top of your deck and put them into your arsenal so they're playable with 3 of a kind up. And if you wanted to, you can stack these so that you can get 2 arrows into your arsenal with something like a New Horizon in play before the quiver breaks, since the destroy effect isn't a part of the cost, and is instead a part of the quiver's actual effect. I really only see this being good in Lexi, since Azalea definitely wants the Crow's Nest, and Riptide really won't make good use of this, but I do think it has its place in Lexi. Next are 2 token quivers. The first is Crow's Nest. This token is an Azalea specialization and has whenever an arrow is put face up into your arsenal from your deck, you may pay 1 resource. If you do, put an aim counter on it. This is the perfect card to make Azalea work. And in the event that is happening today, at time of recording, which I don't remember what it is called, but the event straight following the Outsiders release, Azalea is being played a lot, and that is in large part due to Crow's Nest, as well as some of the other arrows being printed. Aim counters were something that they definitely wanted to push, but didn't really see much play. Crow's Nest makes it so whenever you get an arrow off your Azalea, which already has Dominate lets you put an aim counter on it, allowing you to get whatever strong hit effect that arrow probably has, because pretty much every aim counter arrow has a really good hit effect. So Crow's Nest is a really good card for Azalea. The final quiver is the Driftwood Quiver. This is a Riptide specialization and has the effect instant Destroy Driftwood Quiver to put a card from your arsenal on the bottom of your deck. Sadly, Riptide didn't get as strong as a quiver as Azalea did, and is why Quiver of Abyssal Depths is probably going to be the Riptide choice. If you wanted an effect like this, you'd rather just play Trench of Sunken Treasures. It's very uncommon for a face-up card to be stuck in your arsenal in Ranger, so this quiver doesn't really get much use when the chess piece can be an easy fix for any face-down card in your arsenal that's stuck there. For draft and sealed, where this quiver will see the most use, since it's a token, you get it for free, you'll definitely see it in Riptide, but it's not really going to be the thing that makes you want to play Riptide in those formats. And then, finally, Ranger has one last equipment. They have a new headpiece called Wayfinder's Crest. This is a 1-block Blade Break helmet with, when you defend with it, look at the top card of target hero's deck. This will mainly be used in Azalea to peek at your top card, and really doesn't have much use in Riptide, but this is really just here for draft and sealed, and won't see much constructed play, if any. Next, let's take a look at all of the brand new Ranger Majestics. First is Amplifying Arrow. Amplifying Arrow is a 0-cost yellow arrow with 2 power and 3 block. Amplifying Arrow has, while it is face up in any zone, if it would gain power, it gains that much +1. This card is probably mainly here for Lexi, being able to give it +1 with a Voltaire, pumping it up to 4 instead, but also is pretty nice with something like a Rainrazors, making it a +3 instead of a +2. I don't think this arrow will see a ton of play, but it is an option for decks that do pump up their arrows. Barbed Undertow is the next one. This is a red 1-cost arrow with 5 base and 3 block. If Barbed Undertow has an aim counter, it gains, when this hits a hero, choose red, yellow, or blue. Until the start of your next turn, they can't pitch the cards of the chosen color. This is really strong against certain heroes. Against a deck like Fi, you can say blue to shut off any bigger turns, or red against turns you think they don't have a blue. Against something like Katsu, you can name blue and suddenly their whole turn is gone. And same thing against something like Oldhim. Saying blue can shut off their whole turn. This card will definitely see play in at least some decks, maybe in the sideboard for certain matchups, because there are some where it doesn't really do much. But definitely expect to see Barbed Undertow in at least one deck coming up. The next 3 Majestics are all Riptide specializations, and they're all legendary. So you'll only be able to play one of each. They all are blue and cost 0 and have 3 block and are defense reactions, and are traps. So I will just be reading whatever their effect is. Buzzsaw Trap makes it so when it defends an attack with power greater than its base, that attack can't gain power this turn, meaning its power just becomes the base. This is okay. It's very good versus something like Azalea, who wants to be pumping up their arrows, but it's pretty niche versus some other decks that are just more low to the ground. So Abyssal Trap is just okay, but it is a blue that does block 3, so definitely you should be playing it. Collapsing Trap says when it defends an attack with Go Again, the hero attacking discards their hand, then draws that many -1. This card is a pretty big effect if you're trying to fatigue your opponent as Riptide, since any aggro deck who's already bleeding cards could bleed a ton with this, discarding up to 3, sometimes 4 cards, and then drawing 3 more, or 4 more, depending on how many were discarded. But, oh, I'm sorry, 2 or 3 more, depending on how many were discarded. So I think Collapsing Trap definitely has its place, and even in decks where it doesn't have Go Again. Similarly to the Buzzsaw Trap, it's just a good block at blue. Finally is Spike Pit Trap. This card says when this defends and the attacking hero has activated or played a reaction this chain link, put the top card of their deck in the graveyard, then they lose X life, where X is the number of cards in the graveyard with that name. Honestly, all 3 of these traps just say to me, Katsu can't do anything. Because Spike Pit Trap is going to do a lot of damage to Katsu. Collapsing Trap is going to ruin Katsu's whole turn, and Buzzsaw Trap is going to be able to effectively block some of Katsu's attacks that pump themselves. So, really, Riptide just hates Katsu. But even then, this will have some uses against some other aggro decks that want to be playing reactions. Azuri is probably one of them, but I don't know how much damage it'll do to them. It's mainly here for that 1 mil and like 2 damage, which will be 1 extra because of Riptide's ability. So it's really not too bad, although none of these traps really scream amazing to me. Except that Collapsing Trap. If that goes off, it could be pretty devastating. The final brand new Ranger Majestic is Melting Point. This is a 1-cost action with 3 block at red. It gives your next arrow attack this turn +4, and if that arrow had an aim counter on it, it gains, when this hits a hero, destroy a one-handed weapon they control with 1 base power. I don't understand why this card needed to exist. I mean, I kind of do. It's here to deal with the dagger synergies in this set for Katsu and for the assassins, but I don't know. 1 cost +4 already would have been playable, and I mean, where assassins are definitely going to be playing ways to get their daggers back, this just seems like a pretty big hit to Katsu again. I understand that Katsu is also in this set, and that seems really strong, and from what I've played, he's pretty strong, but I don't know. This is a lot of hate to one class, although I can understand the views of some classes who have also received entire sets that just block their whole character. So, let's just move on. Finishing up our Ranger section, we'll talk about the rares and commons. Boulder Trap is a yellow 3-block for 0 and says when this defends a card with power greater than its base, put a -1 counter on an equipment the attacking hero controls. This seems really good in a longer game, since any pumped attack can result in a -1 block for any of your opponent's armor. Pendulum Trap is the same rate and pitch for when this defends and the attacking hero has played or activated a reaction, this chain link, they mill to. Good for the fatigue strategy, but I think this is definitely one of the weaker traps we've seen. And then Tar Pit Trap, same pitch and rate for when this defends an attack with Go Again, the next time an attack action would hit, don't trigger its hit effects. So that one is a little niche. There are some matchups where it's really strong, and there are a lot where it doesn't do anything. Similar to most other traps, but these yellow rare traps definitely have the least use, although Boulder Trap does have a lot of uses, and you'll definitely see Boulder Trap. But Pendulum and Tar Pit Trap don't do all too much. Next is Fletch a blank color tail. The red one is called Red Tail, yellow is Yellow Tail, and blue is Blue Tail. They are 1 cost with 2 block. All of them give your next arrow plus power. Red is 4, yellow is 3, blue is 2. And say if it has an aim counter on it, it gains whatever color this card is. Cards of that same color have -1 block while defending this arrow. And then this card has Go Again. Similar to the Majestic Barbed Undertow, these are good against certain decks, but really bad against others. So we'll see if these see use. I like Fletcher Red Tail because of how strong it is, but I don't think any of the other colors will end up seeing play. Next is another cycle of all red cards. Similar to the Spike cycle, we have the Lace cycle. They're all 1 cost 2 block that give your next arrow +3 and apply whatever their relevant token is. Blood Rot is a Blood Rot Pox, Frailty is a Frailty, and Inertia is an Inertia. Moving on to the commons, we have Falcon Wing, 0 cost 3 power 3 block. If it is an aim counter, it is +1 Go Again. That's the red one. Infecting Shot is a 1 cost 5 power 3 block at red. With when it has an aim counter, it is +1, and when it hits, apply a Blood Rot Pox. Murkmire Grapnel is the free 4 power 3 block at red. When it has an aim counter, it is +1, and damage from it can't be prevented. Sedation Shot is the same as Infecting Shot, but it applies an Inertia instead. Skybound Shot is 1 for 5, with if it has an aim counter, it gets +1 and has 3 block at red. Spire Sniping is a 1 cost 5 power 3 block, with when it is put or turned face up in an arsenal, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, then put them back in any order. Widowmaker is a 1 cost 4 power with 3 block. Defense reactions can't be played to its chain link, and when it's defended by fewer than 2 cards, it has +3. And finally, Withering Shot is the same thing as Sedation Shot and Infecting Shot, but it applies a Frailty token instead. That's it for all of the Ranger cards. Let's move on to all of the Ninja stuff. As you can see, Ninja doesn't have any new heroes, and instead has 2 reprints, Katsu the Wanderer and Benji the Piercing Wind. They also have a reprint weapon of Harmonized Kadachi. They only have 1 new monoclass equipment, being the Mask of Many Faces. This mask is a 1 block Blade Break head with the effect of instant 1 resource, destroy Mask of Many Faces, name a card. The next attack action card you play this turn gains that name. A really good effect for Sealed and Draft, When you can't find those certain cards that you need to combo into your better cards, you can use the Mask of Many Faces to get that name. Another thing to note is that this can easily help you cheat out bigger combo cards. As an example, if you're in a situation, for some reason you're playing this in not a sealed format and you're playing this in something like Constructed, you can make something like a head jab into a Whelming Gust Wave and then play a Mugenshi release after it. Or you could even make something into a Mugenshi release and then just play a Lord of Wind after it. So there are definitely some fun things you can do with this card that I can't wait to see what people come up with. Next, let's talk about the Ninja Majestics. Cyclone Roundhouse is a 2-cost yellow with 5 power and 3 block. It says combo if Spinning Wheel Kick was the last attack this combat chain. This has, at the beginning of the reaction step, banish a random defending card from each chain link. Really funny how this can get rid of battle-worn equipment, but probably won't see any play, since 2 for 5 isn't the best rate for something that doesn't have Go Again, and doesn't really have the strongest combo ending effect. Next is Dishonor. Dishonor is a 0-cost blue with 2 attack and 3 block. If Bonds of Ancestry was the last attack this combat chain, it has +2. When Dishonor hits a hero, if you control a Surging Strike, Descendant Gust Wave, and Bonds of Ancestry, the hero hit loses their ability for the rest of the game. It's very hard to get Dishonor off, let me tell you. But when you can get it off, it will almost always get blocked because it's so obvious when it is coming. Really, you can only consistently hit it if you have a really good turn, and if you have a really good turn, you're probably winning anyway. Or if your opponent is playing Dash and their hero ability doesn't matter. Against some aggro decks, you can land this if they get too greedy, but in those matchups, it really doesn't matter since they're probably planning on killing you in 1 to 2 turns anyway. It's mainly here because the 3-block blue, they cost 0, but it is an option, so it's definitely going to be a card played in Katsu for a while. Next is Head Leads the Tail. This is a 1-cost red attack with 3 power and 2 block. It has, when this attacks, name another card. Attack action cards with that name have +1 power this combat chain. Go again. This is definitely here for those 100 wins or Fi enthusiasts. Fi has like 4 different head jabs. I wish they were all just named head jab and you could play 30 copies. But they're not. So this will really just be delegated to 100 wins decks trying to stack up 100 wins. Next, we have Wander with Purpose. This is a yellow, 0-cost, 2 power, 3 block Benji specialization with, when this hits, you may discard a card with cost 0. When you do, search your deck for a card with combo and banish it, then shuffle. You may play it this turn. Go again. Pretty strong. Lets you get one of the cards I will talk about later that combos off of Head Jab, which that card will definitely see play in Benji. And this card as well is just a card Benji's effect works with. Has Go Again. It'll see play in Benji because it's playable and good. Next is Silver Wind Shuriken. This is a blue 0-cost item with attack reaction. Destroy Silver Wind Shuriken. Target attack action card with combo gains +1 power. This card sucks. Why would you play this card? I understand you can stack it up, but you playing 3 of these doesn't do much when you're not playing an attack to end your turn and you're only getting +1 as a payoff and it doesn't block. You could pitch it to Gadachi, but this card still sucks. A card that doesn't suck, that's blue and costs 0 and doesn't have any block, is Visit the Floating Dojo. This is a Katsu specialization and is an instant that lets you put a Surging Strike and a card with combo from your graveyard on the top or bottom of your deck. This is great in an endgame situation and will definitely see play in the control matchups that Katsu will be facing. Using this in the late game to put a Surging Strike and a Whelming Gust Wave, or a Surging Strike and a Descendant Gust Wave on top of your deck seems really strong. You can also use it to get back a Mugenshi release if you've already played all 3 and don't have any more in your deck. So Visit the Floating Dojo is definitely a great sideboard card that you will definitely see in Katsu decks. Finally, let's move on to the Ninja rares and commons. Bonds of Ancestry is a 2-cost, 4-power, 3-block at red. It says, combo. If a card with Gust Wave in its name was the last attack this combat chain, this costs 2 less to play and has Go Again. When this attacks, you may banish a card with combo from your graveyard. If you do, search your deck for a card with the same name and banish it. Then you may play that card this combat chain. Bonds is really strong and will definitely see play in Katsu decks. You can use it as a tutor for pretty much every combo piece, and there are a lot of times where you can do multiple smaller combos in a turn that Bonds of Ancestry is really good with. Also, it guarantees you get your Dishonor off if you blocked with one early, so hey, it has that use. It's also pretty good in Benji at blue, although in Constructed you'll probably only see the red ones. Next is Recoil. Recoil is a 0-cost, 3-power, 3-block. The red has 3 power. With combo, if Head Jab was the last attack this combat chain, this card has, when this hits a hero, they put a card from their hand on the top of their deck. Pretty good. Makes them lose a card no matter what, usually. And I think could see play in some different decks. I think it could see play in Benji and Blitz, and I think there could be a Katsu deck that wants to run it. Next is the last rare, Spinning Wheel Kick. This is a 1-cost, 4-power, 2-block. That's the red version. With combo, if Twin Twisters or Spinning Wheel Kick was the last attack this combat chain, this has +1 power, and when this hits, put it on the bottom of its owner's deck. A little bit of extra cards in your deck never really hurt anyone, but it only has 2 block, which makes it a little niche. It's nice that it can combo off itself if you have multiples, but it's really not the strongest card. Next, moving on to the commons, we have Back Heel Kick. This is a 0-cost, 3-power with, if Twin Twisters was the last attack this combat chain, this has, if Back Heel Kick would gain power, instead it gains that much +1. Pretty good with the Twin Twisters, but I really don't think it'll see that much play. Although it does have 3 block, so I guess you could see the blue one seeing play in some Kadachi decks. Be Like Water is probably the best common in Ninja in this set. It's a 0 cost 3 power with 2 block, the red version, with Go Again, and says when it hits, you can pay 1 resource. If you do, choose Head Jab, Surging Strike, or Twin Twisters, and it gains the chosen name. This card is perfect for the Surging Strike Head Jab decks that play both of those combo lines, and I think will definitely become the dominant of the Katsu decks. Becoming Twin Twisters really isn't that strong, but it's still okay in a sealed environment. But Be Like Water is really going to be pushing these Katsu decks to be the decks they are, since paying 2 for Surging Strike isn't always the best thing to be doing in a lot of situations. Next is Deadly Duo. This is a 1 cost 3 power with 2 block, the red version. When this hits, the next attack action card with 2 or less base you play this combat chain gets +2. Go Again. This card is obviously designed for Benji, but why would you ever play this in Benji when you want your attacks to be blocked, or to be not blocked? Because that's the whole point, you want them to be low. Again, I could understand in sealed, which is what this set is really based on, that this card would be okay, but it doesn't really cut it most of the time in my opinion. Next is Descendant Gustwave. This is just like every other 1 cost ninja card in this set for some reason. At common, a 1 cost 3 power 2 block at red with Go Again. And if Surging Strike was the last attack this combat chain, this costs 1 less to play and is +2 power. A really great card that works well with your Surging Strikes and Be Like Water, and is another Gustwave for your Bonds of Ancestry. You'll have to play at least the red ones if you want to be going for the plan with the Dishonor, but that's not too bad since it is a pretty good card being a free 5 attack. This is another card that is great to get with your Visit the Floating Dojo alongside your Surging Strike, and I don't think the other colors are too playable, but you definitely could see them out somewhere. The last new card, and I'm sad that I have to say the last new card, is 1-2 Punch. This is the card I talked about earlier that you want to be getting with your Benji specialization. This is a 3 power 3 block, 0 cost at red with combo. If Head Jab was the last attack this combat chain, this has, when this hits, deal 2 damage to that hero. You'll definitely see the yellow and blue inside of Benji since it's a free 2 damage and it's easily tutorable. So can't wait for that to make some use. And then the reason I said I was sad I had to say the last new card is because there are 3 reprints in this set. It wasn't avoidable. Whenever the idea of a combo set shows up, if you're not making entirely new combo lines, you have to reprint the baseline. Head Jab, Surging Strike, and Twin Twisters are all reprints. Head Jab is just a 0 for 3 with 2 block at red that has Go Again. Surging Strike is a Surging Strike we all know and love. 2 for 5 with 2 block, Go Again. And Twin Twisters is a 1 for 3 with 2 block and Go Again. Choose one. Twin Twisters has, when this hits, your next attack this combat chain gets +1, or Twin Twisters has +1. So theoretically, this is like a leg tap where it's a 1 for 4, but if you wanted to, you could maybe give it to your next attack. I know it was necessary for these cards to be in this set, but it's sad that not every card in this set is brand new, although I really don't mind it since Head Jab, Surging Strike, and Twin Twisters are all cards that definitely have their uses in sealed, which is what the set's mainly designed for. So I can't really be too mad. Thank you all for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. I know this one was a long one, but we went over 2 entire classes worth of cards. Next week, we'll be going over the last few bit, being all of the multi-class cards alongside all of the generic cards. I hope you'll come back for that video next week, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.